Hello and welcome to this Against the Storm tutorial on the Ancient Hearth. As I mentioned in the introductory tutorial, this series will be covering all aspects of the gameplay, all of the various features and mechanics of the game. Against the Storm has undergone many overhaul changes in its 2+ years in early access, and the Ancient Hearth and its screens are no exception. However, now that the game is in version 1.0, we can fully understand and describe how its features work. This tutorial will explain all of the key features of the Ancient Hearth screens and provide some tips and tricks along the way. So first off, what is the Ancient Hearth? Well, it's this building right here. It's one of the two buildings you start every game with, the other being the main warehouse, which is your storage for the game. The Ancient Hearth serves as the heart of the colony. In fact, that's in the description right here. The heart of the colony is protected by the Holy Flame. Villagers gather here to rest, eat, and receive clothing. If the fire goes out, people will lose hope. And that right there explains several of the most important features of the Ancient Hearth. For example, resting, eating, and receiving clothing is all done here, which means that villagers need to be able to come back here over the course of their day, over the course of the time played in the game. And also, if the fire goes out, they will lose hope, which means that people will start leaving your colony once resolve drops. The Ancient Hearth could be considered the most important, the most essential component of the gameplay. Priority 1, if you will. However, luckily, it doesn't require much in the way of maintenance. The hearth burns one or more of 4 different types of fuels. Those are coal, sea marrow, oil, and wood. By default, they are burned in the priority order from left to right, with coal being the most likely to be burned, and down all the way to wood. These checkboxes can be checked and unchecked to determine whether that particular fuel is used as fuel for the hearth, or if it's left alone for other purposes in the game. Overriding or controlling these settings, these checkboxes at the very beginning of the level, is a setting in the options screen where you can select which fuels, I believe it's in gameplay, you can select which fuels you want to have on by default. Here they are right here. Allow fuel by default. I have only wood selected. However, I believe they are all 4 selected at the beginning of the game, and you may choose to select or unselect them as desired. This only configures the fuels that are selected at the start of a new town. Once you click on the hearth and you set the fuels you would like to burn here, that is the new values for this town, and you can change it by checking and unchecking the boxes as you desire. You can also adjust the priority of the fuels. So as I mentioned a few moments ago, the coal is by default the highest priority fuel. Let's say you're in a biome with a large amount of sea marrow and you don't really have another use for it, but you have some coal and you want to use the coal, but maybe you don't want to use the coal all the time. You could prioritize the sea marrow by clicking the up arrow on the sea marrow, and it'll jump to this first position, overriding the coal as the default and then on to the right. You can set up to 3 levels of priority. However, if you only want one of them prioritized over the rest, selecting number 1 priority is sufficient. If you want to control the priorities in a different way, you can set 3 and then maybe 2 and then oil at 1 and then coal at 0, and that'll put those in that exact priority. Be careful when you're clicking these arrows, though, because they will jump as you click the arrow to get into their new position. Below fuel choices is sacrificing. Sacrificing is used to boost certain parameters of the game on an as-needed basis. Here, you can sacrifice wood, coal, sea marrow, or oil, up to 3 stacks of each, and each stack is for wood, 40 wood per minute. That reduces hostility by 50 per stack. More on hostility as in the hostility tutorial, if you would like to learn about that. Coal burns 20 coal per minute per stack and reduces hostility by 80 per stack. Sea Marrow Sacrifice will boost Glade Event work speed by 25% per stack, up to 3 stacks. And finally, Oil Sacrifice will boost global production speed by 25%, up to 3 stacks. That's 25% per stack. So you can see the benefits of each. Wood and coal are very useful during a storm season, perhaps a bad storm season. You also have the opportunity to check or uncheck this box, which is also, I believe, defaulted by a setting here. Yes, stop sacrifice after a storm. This is again the default setting. You can override it in each individual town. And while we're at it, order recipes and fuel by priority is checked here. That's why the recipes were jumping around as I was changing the priorities. You can uncheck this if that is bothersome to you or confusing to you. I don't remember which one of those is checked by whether that is checked or unchecked by default. However, I like it to stop after the storm. Most of the time when I sacrifice, it's wood or coal, and I'm only doing it to make it through that rough storm, and then I want to have them not be sacrificing because I forget. If you forget like I forget, you may want to check that box. At the bottom here is Hearth level. I won't go too deep into Hearths, as that is reserved for, or as levels rather, which are called hubs. I won't go too deep into hubs in this tutorial because I have a tutorial dedicated later in this tutorial series on how those work. But suffice it to say, you start out with 1 level and you earn level 2 and level 3. Each level gains you in a different bonus effect and is unlocked by providing certain things within the range of the hearth. That is this orange circle surrounding the hearth. The range of effect is simply to control how many people live in that hearth's sort of district or neighborhood, as one of these levels is called, the neighborhood there, the hub, generically speaking, as well as what types of decorations are in that range. They don't have any benefit on your production specific to the buildings inside the circle. The bonus here that gives you production bonus is global, not specific to the buildings inside the bubble. But more on that, like I said, when we get into these hearth levels, which are called hubs. Or which establish hubs, I guess, is the better word there. Another key feature of the hearth is the Fire Keeper. Any of the 5 species in the game can be the Fire Keeper. There seems to be a sort of priority or a default of which species will be put first in the hearth upon embarkation to a new settlement. Of course, that's dependent upon which race or species you have available to you here at the beginning of a new settlement. Sometimes you will only have 1 or 2 or 3 of the total of 5, depending on where you're at in your current upgrades, in your upgrades tree, as to whether you have the 4th and 5th available or not. But each race has a different, and I keep using race and species interchangeably. The game refers to them as, it's not there, it's in the encyclopedia. The game refers to them as species. I should use species. Each species has a different specific bonus that they provide to the entire settlement, not just to, again, the people living in the hub. Lizard Firekeepers, that's the Sacred Pyre down the lower one here, are very adept at Ancient Rites, +1 to Global Resolve. So everyone, by a lizard being in the hearth, everyone gets +1 to global resolve. Also, because this particular lizard has an affinity for warmth buildings, they are comfortable in warmth buildings, or because they're in a warmth building, that this individual also gains +5 to their individual resolve, which affects the average resolve for lizards as a whole, but doesn't affect all the lizards by the +5, just the one lizard that's in there. Some of the other effects for the other species, humans lower the impatience growth speed, so it makes it slower gaining the impatience here. Impatience is covered in another tutorial as well. But suffice it to say that sometimes that's really, really useful, that they get slower impatience growth. There are some negative effects that you can gain in your town that speed impatience growth, so having a human in the hearth can help with managing and mitigating that negative boost. Beavers reduce the fuel consumption speed in the hearth by 20%. So if you're in a biome that has not an abundance of trees or not an abundance of wood from trees, we're here in the Royal Woodlands, which has an abundance of wood from trees. You get 2 wood times 2 charges for every tree. If you're in a biome or a situation where you don't have a whole lot of source of fuels, with wood being the most likely source, you also may want to put a beaver in the hearth to reduce the fuel consumption. By the way, I just realized as we were talking about fuels, I missed out on this burn rate number. This is how much time it takes to burn 1 unit of this type of fuel in the hearth. Sorry, I missed that in the earlier part of the tutorial. So we're going to switch this back to a lizard. The other 2 species, Harpy, has a bonus to the carry capacity of every villager in your settlement. I think it's +5, might be +10. I've forgotten. And the Fox has lowered hostility from opening glades. I think it halves the hostility that you gain from each glade. So sometimes, very situationally, foxes can be very beneficial in the hearth, the Ancient Hearth. Harpies are actually a very good choice, second choice, and they might even be second highest priority in an embarkment. If lizards are not available, then I believe the harpy is the next choice placed, but foxes could have usurped them when foxes were added. This has all been in the Hearth tab, by the way. There's also another tab here called Blightrot. This tab will only be visible if you are at the Veteran or higher level of difficulty. That's Veteran, Viceroy, or any of the Prestige levels. And here you can find a summary of the current Blightrot corruption and cysts, and what will happen if you reach the maximum there. Now, I have a separate tutorial in this series on Blightrot, corruption, and all the effects herein. So I'm not going to go any further than that, just making sure you notice there is a tab here for that. There's also a possibility for a third tab here that'll be in the middle if we have it, which we don't in this case, which is the Effects and Upgrades tab. This will show any effects that are currently affecting the hearth, excuse me. Those effects are also denoted down here in the effects section of the HUD, and are usually things like fuel burn time. That's a very common one. There's a few others that are somewhat common, but if you have them, they will be here on another tab, so you can quickly click on the hearth to see what effects are affecting the hearth. Now, as I mentioned, this range of effect is used to enclose a certain number of houses and decorations that affect this hearth level, this hub. And this circle is also used when you want to build additional small hearths. in addition to their materials required there to build, they will help reduce hostility. I believe by 50? I can't remember the number now. And serve as another gathering point for villagers to rest, eat, and receive clothing. If the fire goes out in a small hearth, the people will not use it for their rest, eating, and clothing reception. They will instead travel to another hearth, if nothing else, the Ancient Hearth, to perform those activities. The Small Hearth has a circle of influence, the same size as the main Ancient Hearth, and these two cannot overlap. It will not allow you to place it. You can see the red tiles there. You cannot place it in any way, not just inside, but any way overlapping. And of course, I don't have space revealed here to place it, but if I had this space revealed, these trees cleared out here, I could place this hearth this close, or something like this, and definitely any further out. But you can definitely puzzle piece it together as you wish to fit as many of them as tightly as you want. They do, as I mentioned, cost materials, and the third material there, the wildfire essence, is somewhat limited, although you can purchase it through trading and other means, orders, things like that. But you can build as many of these as you want in your settlement. However, each small hearth will require a keeper to maintain the fire. If the fire goes out, then, as I mentioned, as the tooltip mentioned, the villagers will travel to another hearth to receive their services they need from the hearth. Each hearth, whether it's the Ancient Hearth or a Small Hearth, has its own hub levels. And those hub levels are the same as those found here, and they will stack additively with any other hearths you have in your settlement. So, for example, we'll just look at the first one. The encampment gives +2 to global resolve. Every hearth you have at level 1 will add +2 to global resolve. So if you have 4 hearths in your settlement, you have +8 global resolve just from hearths alone, not counting global resolve from any other effects. Resolve is also, by the way, a topic of a dedicated tutorial later in this series. So that pretty much covers everything about the Ancient Hearth in the game. The remaining tutorials in this series will cover the other aspects of the game, as I mentioned at the beginning. I want to thank you all for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the comment section below, or join me on Discord, the link is in the description below, and discuss the game with me there. If there are aspects of the Ancient Hearth that I didn't cover properly, please let me know and I will add pinned comments to the video with any supplemental content. If you have suggestions for other tutorials, feel free to leave those as well. I will also be starting the game over with a fresh save in a new Let's Play series, so you can see some practical use of the Ancient Hearth and its screens in that series. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.